Let's get down to business here,
let's
since I'm sacrificing my morning painting.
Okay. And we're deeply appreciative.
Down to business.
Hello and welcome to Artifacts, a living archive dedicated to preserving the first-person stories of queer, avant-garde, and underground culture, told by those who lived it. Today's episode is part of our series Silver Factory, an enthralling journey through Andy Warhol's factory, whose inhabitants included an array of characters from socialites to superstars and speed freaks. In this episode, we hear from Viva, born Janet Susan Mary Hoffman, and forever remembered as one of Andy Warhol's most unforgettable and loquacious collaborators. Having grown up as the eldest of 9 children in a strict Roman Catholic family, Viva's sharp wit and fearless presence lit up Warhol and Paul Morrissey's films Bike Boy, Nude Restaurant, and Lonesome Cowboys. With Louis Waldon, she pushed cinema into new territory in Blue Movie, an infamous work that triggered obscenity charges and was pulled from distribution. Viva's life intersected with some of the most influential artists and filmmakers of her time. Michel Auder, William Eggleston, Louis Faurer, but perhaps her most enduring legacy lives on through her daughters, actress Gaby Hoffman and memoirist Alexandra Auder. In this interview, recorded in 2000, Viva offers a glimpse into the life of a true superstar.
I have always been obsessed with the major issues of life from my earliest memory. I would lie in bed at night and try to imagine eternity. And then I would say, well, maybe I can do it tomorrow night, because I would come to the black billows. And I would say, the next day I'd say, maybe tonight, because I'd say, well, if there is no end, if it ends, then there has to be something beyond it. But how can you imagine no end? This was my big, how do you say it, conundrum or conundrum? Conundrum. This was my big conundrum. For I don't know how long this went on. I would keep thinking, well, maybe tomorrow night after I get to bed, I'll be able to figure it out. It may have been inspired by the nuns talking about eternity, because who else would talk about eternity but the nuns? Your parents don't talk to you about eternity. I always slept with a sheet over my head. As I wrote in my opus memoir, probably the only place I could get any privacy, under the sheet. Because my father always called me crazy from earliest childhood. I say to all my brothers and sisters, don't sleep with the sheet over your head or you'll end up crazy like your sister Sue, because she's inhaling all that carbon dioxide. I always mix up monoxide and dioxide. So to this day, if they say you're crazy, I'll just go into a rage and prove I'm crazy, right?
Exactly.
Because I was so the opposite. It was he who was crazy, right? And so to call me crazy, well, it's like, you know, a sexual molester. They say, oh, she's crazy. That's the thing that can really make me fly off the handle. If anybody says I'm crazy, then I truly will go crazy, thereby proving their accusations. And there's the rub, as Shakespeare would say. At least we can laugh about this absurd condition of being human.
Yeah.
Well, we have to say we must agree with the reincarnation theory, and that you choose your own parents in order to make the entire experience, to give it some meaning and have it make sense. Well, I must have done something really terrible in another life. Maybe I was Elizabeth I, chopping off people's heads. Who knows, you know? Who was the worst tyrant you can think of? Male tyrant. I think I was a male tyrant. My mother had great verbal facility. As I said, she won all our essay contests for us.
Yes.
The Voice of America. I won a radio for the following. My mother dictated it to me during lunch from school, 6th grade, I think. Picture a country where church doors are open to people of all denominations, where people go to business, school, and pleasure happy and without fear. This is America. This can be yours through the crusade for freedom. I said, Mom, everybody doesn't go to business school. She said, business, comma, school, comma. So we're all in the school auditorium, the whole school, and they announce, and Sue Hoffman, Crusade for America. And all the kids knew my mother wrote it because I came back and said, oh, my mother just wrote this. What are you going to do, give your mother the radio if you win? So I had to go up and get the radio, and my knees were shaking. I was so embarrassed. Because you can't imagine how I was brought up. I mean, you know, cross your legs, your panties are showing. I mean, you know, you were just, with my father always parading around in his underwear and leaving the doors open and leaving his piss in the toilet. I mean, it was completely, as everything we've come to discover in a Catholic alcoholic family, is everything, there were completely contradictory orders given. Everything, and on a deep level, because, you know, you're not saying, you're a little kid, you're not saying, well, the behavior and the spoken word are two different things. You're getting it, it's soaking into your layers of consciousness subtly, very subtly.
Yeah.
So you don't know which is right and which is wrong because you're shown one thing and told the opposite. Wouldn't that make anybody nuts? Okay, but I'm an adult. I'm more than an adult. I'm on my way to the grave, so. I love to tell people we're on our way to the grave, downhill from here on in. We're just a few steps from the tomb or the pile of burning logs. What difference does it make? Come on, hurry up. You don't have long before you die. When my father said he was going home to die, you know, he wanted his blue suit and everything. I said, give it to the Salvation Army. Why are you wasting a good blue suit? You want to be embalmed? Or, you know, I'm going to die. So, well, we're all going to die sometime. I mean, aren't we? Oh, he said, Alma's not here. Will you come into my room in the morning, make sure I'm okay? I said, don't worry. We'll know you're dead by the smell. And he said, thanks a lot, Sue. Thanks a lot. I said, what is the big deal? We are born to die. Can't I make a joke about death? Yeah, I wanted to be an actress when I was maybe 14, and my mother said, oh, everybody wants to be an actress. Every girl wants to be an actress. So I abandoned that idea. Well, the first time I ever took off my clothes was with Louis Faurer, and I said, no, I don't want to take off my clothes, I'm too flat-chested. He said, oh, come on. And I said, oh, you have beautiful breasts. Oh, what are you talking about? So I said, oh, well, maybe they're not so bad after all. Even though, you know, we all swim on the dock naked and everything, I guess I probably started the whole thing because I felt I had to do whatever I was afraid of. Part of OCD. If you're afraid of it, do it. But I ended up mostly posing for artists and fashion illustrators where I really was like an actress because I'd bring my own props. I'd bring my own clothes and my own props, and I'd set up a whole little scene. They loved me at those art schools. I would bring, you know, hookah pipes and cushions and do a whole Arab thing with a turban on my head. Stop it! Stop barking! As a child, I was very annoyed with my role as a female. Plus that I couldn't understand why I was supposed to grow up and get married and have kids so they could grow up and get married and have kids. So they could grow. I said, what's the point? But as we grew up, we weren't informed of this divine aspect of femininity, of creation. We were, you know, taught that we just had to find a man to support us, have babies, wash the dishes, etc. You know, and then there was that whole 50s white gloves, girdles, stockings that you had to wear. That was part of your uniform in school. Well, everybody talked about you and said, did you see her ass wiggle? The ass had to be a monolithic form, unmoving monolith. And the nipples couldn't ever show through a sweater or anything. You had to have, you know, if you had nipples that stuck out, you had to put something inside your bra. Anyway, the days when I grew up were very, not that it still isn't anti-female, let's face it, but at least we're not having our clitorises and labia cut off and sewn up. As I said, I have to say I was the first neo-feminist, neo meaning since the first wave of the suffragettes, which probably wasn't the first wave. When I heard about the myth of the vaginal orgasm, the news was almost as good as the second coming of Christ. And they had... This was before we knew that all sexually induced orgasms were myths. before we got into yoga. But when I was 22 and still a virgin, and I moved in with a photographer named Louis Faurer. Louis was my first boyfriend, early 60s. And the big thing was orgasm then. What was an orgasm? That was the big mystery. I swear to God. The only thing around was the Kinsey report. You know, that was pre-Masters and Johnson. And what's her name? That pretty girl with the red strawberry blonde hair who writes...
The Height report?
Yeah, Sherry Height.
Okay.
Yeah, before all those people. So the big thing was orgasm. None of them ever looked very good to me then.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Well, Andy and Paul, Bridget was funny as hell, as I said. Undine was really brilliant. But everybody was kind of, you know, I never would have known them if I hadn't gotten into that Warhol thing. I mean, I would have thought they were all just too weird. Of course, you know, once I got to know them, you know, everybody had their own particular genius. It was total acceptance and total encouragement. You're absolutely right, but he never said anything. It was just somehow you came up with your best ideas and had fun doing it. I said, let's rent a house in Bridgehampton. He said, okay. So Louis Waldon and I drove out in some open sports car, and we found a really nice country house with chintz sofas. You know, it was really great, and the price was right, and Andy changed his mind. He hated the country. And he's alike. I'll tell you where I think part of it comes from, as with my own father. They have to be where they're recognized by other people, where they can control their environment, where people know who they are. Deep down, they both have this exaggerated, you know, the feminists would say the patriarchal, there's a turkey buzzard circling right out there. Circling. Deep-rooted fear of nature. It's a deep-rooted fear of the uncontrollable, which was always classically feminine, Mother Nature. Andy was, by the way, in love with Paul. We were at Gordon Loxley's, and I was looking at those Marilyns, and Andy had a drink in his hand, and we were talking about where we were going to sleep. Andy usually put me in a room with Paul to save money, and Paul would put a pillow over his head and sleep in his underwear, and as Bridget says, never take a shower. And I was really in love with Andy and Paul, to tell you the truth. So I said, gee, Andy, I'd rather sleep with Paul, you know. And Andy said, so would I, like that. And I can't remember if he then went on to elaborate and say.
But it felt real.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. He was in love with Paul. I'm sure Paul knew it, you know, on some level. I would get ideas for movies, but you know, I didn't want to take drugs, I didn't want to drink, I didn't really want to have sex that much with anybody, you know. I mean, there was nothing I wanted to do. It was just, it seemed that we could just keep thinking up new things for movies, and I don't know, it was just fun. He had an aura about him that was easy to be around. Of course, he would always say, oh, Viva, your mind is a gold mine. Oh, that's a brilliant idea. Oh, your mind is a gold mine. Oh, you should make a fortune. The idea was I should go to Hollywood and make a fortune because I was going to bring everybody along with me because my mind was a gold mine. I think they both sort of wanted to be me, you know what I mean? They both kind of wanted to be me. They wished they could be a female and do what I was doing, because they really wanted to rant and rail and yell. I was their alter ego. Because Andy copied my voice, you know. He ended up talking like me.
Oh, he did?
He copied my style of speaking. He used to imitate me all the time, and then he started just doing it all the time. Like, oh, Bridget. He picked that up from me. He picked that drawling kind of... And all the biographers, you know, call it a whining drawl, whatever. But well, I remember him saying, do that over again. The most direction I ever got out of Andy. And I said, Paul, you know, why would Andy say do it over again? Paul would say, because he ran out of tape or out of film. He came to the end of the reel. That's the only reason he ever said do anything over again, because he didn't get it. But, you know, that's another thing about female. You know, nobody questioned Andy for having a magazine, paintings, books, etc., right? Nobody. And nobody called him a dilettante.
That's true.
Well, if you're successful and, if you're making money and you're very successful, it's okay. But if you're not making money, then you're a dilettante.
Yep.
Despite
Just
decades of the history of artists dying penniless. So she was really out there, really out there. Oh, I only met her twice.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
The first time she told me about her father going down on her. Andy said, Viva, you should meet Valerie. We were in Max's, and I guess I asked her about her life. And I diagnosed her.
Did you?
Well, I didn't diagnose her as a paranoid schizo. I said, no wonder you're a lesbian. I diagnosed her sexual orientation as a result of childhood molestation, let's put it that way.
Yep.
And she thought that was a very smart idea.
Yep.
And I think it's the only time I ever really spoke to her.
But she would.
If her father wasn't dead, she probably would have gone and shot him too. She took me very seriously. Then she threatened to kill Michel and Alex after she shot Andy. The police, they let her out of jail, or rehab or whatever, the hospital. And the police came and brought me a note. Dear Viva, I'm not going to shoot you because I want to make you suffer. I'm going to shoot your husband instead. So I said to them, why didn't you put her back in? Well, we can't do anything until a crime's been committed. She gave the police the note to give me. So I was terrified for months or years of walking out with Alex, a baby, and being shot from a rooftop. Well, Paul sort of made an amorphous kind of pass at me in a bedroom, where we had to share the room on college lecture tour, because I tripped over there were two beds that opened out into a V, and they were connected at the foot. And Paul put his arm around me, and I was embarrassed. I mean, I really was in love with Paul, but I was embarrassed. And so I moved away. I thought, oh, gee, I'm taking advantage of him. He's experiencing a moment of weakness here. That's actually how I felt.
Fascinating.
And that's really strange, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, what kind of neuroses does that speak of on my part? Oh, yeah, I was talking about marrying Paul. Paul, why don't we get married?
And why do you think what was that about?
I don't know. I just felt comfortable with him. Oh, I would also say to Andy, let's get married.
Do you think Andy took that seriously?
No. No, but Ivy was really serious about marrying Andy, if you will recall.
Yes.
No, I had no sexual attraction to either one of them, but I really loved them. Paul was great to talk to. He was really fun. Well, I looked at those movies at the Warhol Museum, and I thought they were the most boring things I'd ever seen. I just couldn't even listen. I kept saying, fast forward, fast forward, fast forward. They were incredibly boring. It's so funny, when we were doing them, we thought they were so important. We thought it was going to change the history of filmmaking. No more scripts. This was really revolutionary. Probably will be 50 years from now or something, But they were boring as hell. Well, you know what Picasso said. You know what Picasso said?
No, what did he say?
The originator always makes the thing ugly and the imitators make it pretty. Any director who's making a movie, if he's good, he sets up an intuitive rapport with the subject, and the camera has a lot to do with it too, because you know how they say, the camera likes her, the camera doesn't like her. We don't know why that is either, do we? But I'm not so much talking about the visual. Can't you kind of tell when a person is kind of fake a little more on film, maybe? I mean, doesn't the camera really bring out defects? And I really think it's all a mystery. And I hated everything I said, but Paul was always trying to inject these kind of silly plots into everything. So I would be forced to follow some plot line that Paul had thought up, but since he couldn't write, and I didn't really realize I could write, or I would have written some decent dialogue. I guess it was the feminine thing, thinking, oh, I'm, just the girl, I'm just a girl here, or whatever. It just never occurred to me to take charge and say, okay, I'm going to write this down. We're going to have dialogue here. Just never occurred to me. I forgot I could write. Well, and but I would sit at the typewriter all night long with Paul dictating to me these dumb plots, and I would type them up. Not for any particular movie. Paul would think up a movie. For some reason, we never made them. And he'd say, okay. And I'd say, okay, dictate, Paul. And I'd type it up as he wrote, as he talked. And we probably didn't have any dialogue. It was probably just what they would now call a treatment. I don't know what he called it. Like Lonesome Cowboys. Okay, this is going to be a reverse of Romeo and Juliet. It's going to be Ramona and Julian, and you're going to be, you know, they're all going to hate you. And all Paul's ideas, to use me, was I was going to be besieged by these, you know, I was this harpy who they all hated, and they were going to sort of besiege me. Yeah, I'm always the harpy. That's right. I'm almost always the harpy. Comes from being the oldest of 9 and having an overdeveloped sense of responsibility. It became the opening scene where I'm in the bathtub with this guy, talking about the difference between the clitoris and the penis, the nerves. I had just been with this professor from Princeton, who's a writer, Sebastian de Grazia. Did you ever hear of him? He gave me this whole speech the night before about penises and clitorises and how many nerves are in the end of each one, because I was giving him all my theories on sex and women, and he said, oh, you're absolutely right. So, and then he talked about Churchill, I think. Oh, well, Churchill received everybody in his bathtub. So I just repeated the whole Sebastian de Grazia dialogue the next day, and they thought, oh, that was so brilliant. You know, no, we didn't have anybody who talked like that. I mean, who knew about Churchill? But that was what I would do. I would just, you know, talk about whatever happened to me the day before. That's why I was able to write for this in the style column in the Village Voice for so long, because anything I could think up, I could somehow relate it to style, because that was the space they gave me. So if I wanted to write about religion, I wrote religious chic and related it to style or whatever. So that was my particular genius in those films. So that's why my memoir, I'm calling it Expillience, the experience version of consilience, because I've always been able to contemplate upon my various experiences and say, this fits with this and this fits with that. Okay, Lonesome Cowboys came about because we were on a college lecture tour in Tucson, and the day we were leaving, we walked out on the balcony. I'd never been in the Southwest before, and Andy said, isn't it beautiful? And I was watching a gardener mow the lawn or whatever, and I said, yeah, I don't think I can leave here unless you promise that we'll come back. He said, okay, we'll make a movie here. Bridget wouldn't come. They sort of made me think that she wouldn't come because, you know, she didn't want me to take any attention away from her, but it was probably speed.
Yeah.
And on Dean, probably the same thing. They weren't sure they could get their drug of choice in San Diego.
What? I know, he won't do anything with it.
Eric Emerson raped me. And I told John, and he said, that's okay, I'll sleep in your cabin with you. Nobody can get in, and we never, ever had sex. I never had, actually, sex with John, even though I lived with him for a while in Malibu.
Eric certainly reads as a gay man.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
And it looks like
He was strong, too. Boy, was he strong. You know, you can see in Lonesome Cowboys where he's showing the ballet things, he's really got muscles.
Yeah. Well, he had been trained as a dancer.
I know. Maybe maybe he made a pass at me and I turned him down, so he raped me. I don't remember. I just remember the actual rape.
Blue movie. You object. There's the sex scene is what is
the
what
dumb, those two stupid sex scenes, yeah.
And what
stupid.
what makes them stupid to you?
Because they were like, you know, two robots, just you know, there was nothing involved with them. It was a mechanical, robotic performance.
And you had a sense that sex could be a beautiful.
Yeah, I wanted it to be everything. But you know, Louis was a boyfriend of mine. I knew what sex was like with him. I mean, you know, that's why he was an ex-boyfriend, right? So, I felt, since I had thought it up and it was all set up, I thought, you know, I always did everything I was afraid of doing. Then I always thought I had to go through with something once I thought it, conceived it. That's how stupid I was. I'd just never seen the desert before. I'd never seen the Southwest. And as I discovered over the years, and I read someone else a woman artist, say the older she got, the closer she had to get to the sun. Kept traveling further and further west. She needed more and more and more light, which is true. Not only does your vision kind of dim a little, you can't read something unless it's under a light. When your parents used to say you're going to ruin your eyes, how can you read like that? So the stronger the light is, the more you're back at your original perception of things, because you're getting more light to compensate. But also, I find all my energy comes from the sun. I find it impossible to, say, clean or organize if I'm in a room that doesn't have sunlight coming in. In the Chelsea, I had direct sun all afternoon, southern exposure. And I was up on the 8th floor. So even though I was living basically in hell, I had the 8th floor southern exposure light, so it gave me a lot of energy. And I suspect that's why I finally began just doing landscape paintings, mainly as an excuse just to be
to get out
outside. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Oh no, God, everything's so funny. It's so funny being alive.
Yeah.
So funny. Being human is such a comical situation to be in. I mean, look at that water lily bud. Doesn't it look beautiful there with that reflection? Isn't it just limpid?
Beautiful.
I mean, wouldn't you like to be that water lily right now? Of course, it'll be dead in a couple of years. We'll be dead in a couple of years. What's the difference? But I mean, when you look at nature, everything's so perfect. Even when it's raining, or everything's always perfect. But to be human is so comical. It's just so ridiculous.
Artifacts is a free oral histories platform. Please like, subscribe, and visit our website, www.artifacts.movie, for an ad-free, interactive experience with bonus content. If you're able, please make a tax-deductible donation at www.artifacts.movie/donate. Hit the link on screen to watch another Artifacts interview.